What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy. Welcome back to our Bible study. Okay, so Leviticus chapter 16 seems like it might be significantly different than other chapters, so I'm not going to go too much into what's happened so far. We'll just dive right in here. Alrighty, Leviticus chapter 16. The Lord spoke to Moses after the death of Aaron's two sons, who died after they entered the Lord's presence and burned the wrong kind of fire before him. The Lord said to Moses, "Warn your brother Aaron not to enter the most holy place behind the inner curtain whenever he chooses. If he does, he will die. For the ark's cover, the place of atonement, is there, and I myself am present in the cloud above the atonement cover." Okay, so I'm trying to make sure that I'm reading this with the correct, kind of inflection, you might say, correct emphasis. So, I think the warning is for Aaron not to be, flippant about entering the most holy place just at any time that he wants to. Because, that kind of thing, being flippant with the rules, was the reason Aaron's two sons wound up dying. I mean, at least that's what seems logically consistent to me. I don't know, maybe we'll get more detail as we read further in the chapter. Also, that was chapter, 9 or 10? The whole Nadab and Abihu, being killed because they burned the wrong kind of fire before the Lord. And we're just now circling back around to it and hearing something that God said in relation to that. Okay, anyway, moving along. Verse 3. When Aaron enters the sanctuary area, he must follow these instructions fully. He must bring a young bull for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. He must put on his linen tunic and the linen undergarments worn next to his body. He must tie the linen sash around his waist and put the linen turban on his head. These are sacred garments, so he must bathe himself in water before he puts them on. Aaron must take from the community of Israel 2 male goats for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. Okay, so this sounds like it could be, a process that was meant specifically in that moment just to have Aaron kind of atone for the sins of his sons, or this might be a perpetual thing that he was supposed to do anytime that he was going to enter the most holy place, aka the Holy of Holies. It's not, I don't know. Neither possibility is completely out of the question, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. Okay, verse 6. Aaron will present his own bull as a sin offering to purify himself and his family, making them right with the Lord. Then he must take the 2 male goats and present them to the Lord at the entrance of the tabernacle. He is to cast sacred lots to determine which goat will be reserved as an offering to the Lord and which will carry the sins of the people to the wilderness of Azazel, or Azazel, I don't know. Aaron will then present as a sin offering the goat chosen by lot for the Lord. The other goat, the scapegoat chosen by lot to be sent away, will be kept alive, standing before the Lord. When it is sent away to Azazel in the wilderness, the people will be purified and made right with the Lord. So, there's the actual origin of the word scapegoat, in case you didn't know. But, anyway. So, offerings to be presented before he goes into the Holy of Holies. I get a feeling that this as it continues on. It's supposed to be like a perpetual, ongoing kind of thing. Because, it's like, as we've discussed in previous chapters, there are continual sins, there are ongoing things that people just do that make them unclean or impure before God. And so, in order to enter the most holy place, Aaron or whoever the high priest was, later on, would have to be absolutely sure that they were pure and holy and right with God, like to the highest degree. Because again, not doing such would not be pleasing to God. It would not be up to his standards, and it would not be allowed. Therefore, you'd get something like what happened with Aaron's sons. Okay, quick look at the footnotes. So, or to make atonement for himself and his family. I assume that's it, as a possible swap for to purify himself and his family, making them right with the Lord. To do footnote, a tabernacle just says Hebrew, could be tent of meeting. Footnote here, it's in the wilderness, and it will make atonement for the people, rather than the people will be purified. The whole atonement / being purified is just like, that seems like a common thing from these translators, that they just indicate, hey, we went with this, but it could be this. Finding it interesting that, the one goat that was the sin offering was not the one that was the scapegoat meant to carry the sins of the people. So, even with that, there's not quite exactly so. There's a disconnect between how that was done and how in the New Testament we have the example of Jesus. But anyway, I'm digressing, so I should probably continue along. Verse 11. Aaron will present his own bull as a sin offering to purify himself and his family, making them right with the Lord. After he has slaughtered the bull as a sin offering, he will fill an incense burner with burning coals from the altar that stands before the Lord. Then he will take 2 handfuls of fragrant powdered incense and will carry the burner and the incense behind the inner curtain. There in the Lord's presence, he will put the incense on the burning coals, so that a cloud of incense will rise over the ark's cover, the place of atonement that rests on the ark of the covenant. If he follows these instructions, he will not die. Then he must take some of the blood of the bull, dip his finger in it, and sprinkle it on the east side of the atonement cover. He must sprinkle blood 7 times with his finger in front of the atonement cover. Okay, so I guess this is sort of proceedings for, basically explaining what Aaron was supposed to do if and when he were to go into the most holy place. So all these, you've got the offering of the goat and the scapegoat thing. Then you've got the offering of his bull to kind of doubly account for himself as high priest. And then he could actually go in to the holy place, do all the stuff with the incense, and then there's the sprinkling of the blood. So when it says the atonement cover, I'm assuming that means the Ark of the Covenant cover. I mean, it says right here, over the Ark's cover, the place of atonement. So, yeah, atonement cover, same concept, I would assume. Footnote there, the Hebrew could say above the testimony rather than the Ark of the Covenant. But yeah, it doesn't even say specifically if there was a certain time that the Day of Atonement was supposed to be, but this all seems related to that. And obviously, there was a time and place for this kind of thing. Whether or not it was supposed to be on certain occasions or not is still kind of uncertain. Okay. So then we get to verse 15. Then Aaron must slaughter the first goat as a sin offering for the people and carry its blood behind the inner curtain. There he will sprinkle the goat's blood over the atonement cover and in front of it, just as he did with the bull's blood. Through this process, he will purify the most holy place, and he will do the same for the entire tabernacle, because of the defiling sin and rebellion of the Israelites. No one else is allowed inside the tabernacle when Aaron enters it for the purification ceremony in the most holy place. No one may enter until he comes out again after purifying himself, his family, and all the congregation of Israel, making them right with the Lord. Footnote of purify just says make atonement for. Again, just kind of a choice in wording from the translators. But, so, it mentioned the goats kind of before it mentioned the offering of the bull, but the bull was offered first. So Aaron was supposed to kind of do his own offering first, then go into the tabernacle, set it up, but then do the offering for the broader people to make sure that they're right with God, I guess, before fully seeking out God's counsel or whatever he might have gone to the most holy place for. Which, now that I think about it, this sounds somewhat similar to what was done for the initial anointing ceremony, I think. Whenever it was mentioned that, God was going to visit them on that day and they were to make these offerings to purify themselves and prepare for God's visit. And then once again, because of, people messing up just generally being a thing that happens because life and because we're not perfect, this seems to me like it would probably be an ongoing thing. Not sure how often, but I would assume if there was any other discernment of, God wanting to speak to Aaron in a certain way, or, Aaron needing to seek the Lord's counsel on a certain matter or anything of that sort, anything that would require him going to the most holy place, that this, I assume, was the procedure. Unless this was a certain, time frame that it was okay, it's, it's been a month or 3 months or whatever time span that it was just kind of automatically assumed, okay, time to make atonement for the people. Okay, verse 18. Then Aaron will come out to purify the altar that stands before the Lord. He would do this by taking some of the blood from the bull and the goat and putting it on each of the horns of the altar. Then he must sprinkle the blood with his finger 7 times over the altar. In this way he will cleanse it from Israel's defilement and make it holy. Okay, so, right, the previous thing was for the atonement cover, and, purifying that. This is for the altar. Okay. And you might wonder, okay, why would these objects need to be purified? I mean, the altar could make sense because offerings and stuff. You wouldn't think it would be necessary for, the Ark of the Covenant. But maybe the idea of, it just being in the presence of the people who continually sin and rebel. Maybe it was just because of that, proximity or whatever. I don't know. Anyway. Okay. Moving on to verse 20. When Aaron has finished purifying the most holy place and the tabernacle and the altar, he must present the live goat. He will lay both of his hands on the goat's head and confess over it all the wickedness, rebellion, and sins of the people of Israel. In this way, he will transfer the people's sins to the head of the goat. Then a man specially chosen for the task will drive the goat into the wilderness. As the goat goes into the wilderness, it will carry all the people's sins upon itself into a desolate land. Okay, so it wasn't necessarily just, hey, we're gonna, get it out of town. It seems like there was a certain person that may have had the task of leading it, far away and, make sure that it went out there and didn't come back. So again, that's actually the true origin of what a scapegoat is. Verse 23. When Aaron goes back into the tabernacle, he must take off the linen garments he was wearing when he entered the most holy place. He must leave the garments there. Then he must bathe himself with water in a sacred place, put on his regular garments, and go out to sacrifice a burnt offering for himself and a burnt offering for the people. Through this process he will purify himself and the people, making them right with the Lord. He must then burn all the fat of the sin offering on the altar. The man chosen to drive the scapegoat into the wilderness of Azazel must wash his clothes and bathe himself in water. Then he may return to the camp. So, so there's kind of this procedure regarding entering the most holy place, and the sacrifices and that kind of stuff. But then once those sacrifices are done and, the purification ritual is complete, Aaron was supposed to take off certain priestly clothes and get back into his regular clothing. And I guess that has something to do with, not wanting to get the priestly clothes defiled or contaminated or whatever you want to call it by, his regular livelihood. And then there was still the burnt offering. So you had sin offerings for Aaron specifically and the people, and then there's burnt offerings after all this is done. Anyway. Verse 27. The bull and the goat presented as sin offerings, whose blood Aaron takes into the most holy place for the purification ceremony, will be carried outside the camp. The animal's hides, internal organs, and dung are all to be burned. The man who burns them must wash his clothes and bathe himself in water before returning to the camp. On the 10th day of the appointed month in early autumn, you must deny yourselves. Neither native-born Israelites nor foreigners living among you may do any kind of work. This is a permanent law for you. On that day, offerings of purification will be made for you, and you will be purified in the Lord's presence from all your sins. It will be a Sabbath day of complete rest for you, and you must deny yourselves. This is a permanent law for you. In future generations, the purification ceremony will be performed by the priest who has been anointed and ordained to serve as high priest in place of his ancestor Aaron. He will put on the holy linen garments and purify the most holy place, the tabernacle, the altar, the priests, and the entire congregation. This is a permanent law for you, to purify the people of Israel from their sins, making them right with the Lord once each year. Moses followed all these instructions exactly as the Lord had commanded him. Okay, so 10th day of the appointed month in early autumn, footnote there, 10th day of the 7th month. This day in the ancient Hebrew lunar calendar occurred in what is currently known as September or October. Maybe that's when this Day of Atonement was supposed to specifically happen. Okay, so maybe it wasn't just necessarily every time Aaron wanted to go into the most holy place. So, which that kind of, seems a little bit more, I don't know if reasonable is the best word to use there, but to do all of that stuff every time Aaron would have wanted to enter the most holy place again to possibly, seek God's counsel or anything like that, that seems like maybe a bit much, but again, I'm not God, I don't set the standard for that. But this, if it was just a yearly thing, then yeah, sure, that seems totally reasonable as an annual ceremony kind of thing to have all of this happening. All of this consists of, let's see here, so there was sin offering of the bull for the high priest. Then there was the stuff with the incense and the sprinkling of the bull's blood. Then the sin offering of the goat for the people and the sprinkling of its blood. Then there was the thing with the scapegoat and the high priest putting his hands on the scapegoat, confessing the sins of the people, and sending that away. Then there's burnt offerings for the high priest specifically, and for the whole people. So, yeah, and I think I even skipped over a step or two in that. But, yeah, quite a bit going on there. But for an annual thing, sure. And it makes me wonder if, kind of the point of it almost was more so to keep, have a regular purification ritual for the high priest, the people, and even, important articles within the tabernacle. Anyway, footnote here at deny yourselves. Okay. So, must fast, which that seems like, deny yourself sounds a bit more general and sounds like it could mean more things. Fasting is a bit more, specific, like they weren't supposed to eat, or probably just eat. And with them not eating thus not having as much energy, it also then makes sense for them not doing any kind of work and straining themselves, using up more energy that they already are not getting as much of because of fasting. Footnote here, where it says, on that day, offerings of purification will be made for you. It says, or atonement will be made for you to purify you. Yeah. Again, purification, atonement, used rather interchangeably, I guess, or whenever it talks about purification, generally speaking, the Hebrew could have also meant atonement. Footnote here, again, same kind of thing. And yeah, I think we're pretty much done. I think we've covered the whole chapter. And I already gave kind of the, too long didn't read version of all the happenings. So, yeah. That does it for Leviticus 16, I guess. Alright, so a bit of a different feel from some of the recent chapters. This one is not so much a, hey, avoid this stuff, as it was just like, okay, here is a, purification ceremony that I want you to do regularly, seemingly every year, if I was reading that right. But in any case, we kind of talked about before how there are things that we do that God's not okay with, that maybe we don't even really realize that we've done something God's not okay with. And I guess also just regarding like the regular usage of the tabernacle and its proximity to, sinful, imperfect people, God wanting, things to be pure and clean, decided, all right, we're going to have this kind of purification ceremony ritual thing for the tabernacle and its instruments, as well as kind of a broad, overarching, atonement ceremony for the people of Israel. But anyway, that's all I've got for now. So, as always, like, share if you enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and click the bell to get updates when I post new videos. Look down in the description to get info on other social media pages, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Any others that I eventually add, I will put down there. And underneath that, leave comments with any thoughts that you have, whether it's related to, to Bible questions in general, this chapter specifically, any other video ideas you have, whatever you have in mind, let me know down below. So that's going to do it for now. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you for the next video. But until then, stay cool, people.